Kamaru Usman once again proved himself to be a very special fighter with his dominant victory over the BMF champion Jorge Masvidal at UFC 251 earlier this month. Now look, it wasn't the prettiest in terms of the spectacle that it had perhaps promised, but in terms of what we learnt about Kamaru and his skill set, it has become even clearer to us all that it will take something extraordinary to remove him from the top of the welterweight pile. To those who can appreciate a good plan coming together, Usman's victory was yet another masterpiece in control, risk assessment and pacing. The tempo that was established by the Nigerian Nightmare after the first round proved to be the perfect counter to the one true hope that Jorge had of winning the fight, the knockout. It's not that we learnt anything particularly shocking about Usman from this performance. In fact, the manner in which he smothered his way to a unanimous decision victory was more or less in line with what you would expect from him at this point. But the way he completely nullified Gamebred using one major facet of his game, his work in the clinch, really does do a good job at putting this man's greatness into perspective. Once Usman established that his mix of pressure and pace was working, Masvidal's odds began to drop minute by minute, round by round. The Colby fight aside, we've seen this time and time again from Kamaru. The way he limits options and wrenches control of a fight away from his opponent is a taxing approach, in every sense of the word, and as we, the viewers, watched from home, the fight's entertainment value began to steadily decline as Usman appeared to have things more or less wrapped up by the midway point. That level of dominance is a very, very impressive thing. Sure, Masvidal took the fight on short notice, and sure, we could speculate over how a fully prepared version of Gamebred would do over 5 rounds, but if you ask me, the stylistic clash and Usman's overall skill set would make it a tough night for him under any circumstances. I'm not saying that he couldn't do it, but I would take Usman if I was a betting man. At this point in his career, it is hard to know what it will take to knock Kamaru off the top. And in trying to place him among the legendary welterweights that came before him, it became pretty evident to me that we could potentially be in the earliest stages as far as the growth and development of Usman's title reign is concerned. I do think that Kamaru, out of all of the UFC champions right now, has the best chance of carving out a long and fruitful streak as champion, one that could extend to a number that would stand proudly alongside some of the greatest title runs we've seen of the eras gone by. When you look down the roster at the other active champions, most either have time working against them or an eventual jump up in weight in their sights. Fighters such as Khabib Nurmagomedov, Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic are no doubt coming into their final few fights within the sport, and at this point, it's too early to know how dominant the likes of Alexander Volkanovski, Petr Yan and even Israel Adesanya will be, in terms of both their styles and what we've seen of them so far. I do think that it's going to take a performance of a serious calibre to knock Usman off at this point. And looking at the contenders who surround him, it is difficult to point to one as a real foil for the style presented by the champion. At this early stage, for me, Gilbert Burns is an interesting pick, as much as I would have thought otherwise before seeing him dominate and defeat Tyron Woodley. With Burns standing as a perfect mix of both dangerous striking and exceptional grappling, Usman, though certainly no slouch on the ground, would be forced to play Gilbert's game to at least some extent if they do eventually fight. It is hard to know exactly how successful the clinch-heavy approach he seems to favour would be with someone as crafty as Burns. I don't doubt that Usman could take down and control Burns as part of his game plan, given his physical advantages, but even still, Durinho is a bit of a wild card and one that I never really feel comfortable betting against. In terms of the striking, Kamaru in my eyes is a very underrated technician. Perhaps not in terms of his offensive output, but when it comes to tying everything together and using his defense to move in and grab a hold of you, his ability to work and maneuver in the striking range through constant pressure is excellent. We saw it against Jorge, and I would imagine that he would do well against anyone on the feet at this point. Leon Edwards, of course, is another one who could really ask questions of the champ. Edwards does everything very well and is privy to some very interesting advantages that he could exploit in certain positions on the ground and in the clinch. That being said, I think Usman's pressure and physicality would be the difference maker between the two. The fight would of course stand as a rematch of the pair's 2015 clash, a fight that saw Kamaru grind Rocky down in a fashion that would come to be his signature style and approach. I've little reason to suspect that a rematch would be too different, even given Leon's incredible improvements over the last few years, but that's just my pick. Of course, Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal have both tasted defeat by Usman's hand, both under very different circumstances, but even still, I wouldn't be too quick to discount either man's chances in a rematch. If I were to rank those 4 contenders in terms of their shot at beating the champ, in my mind I would probably say from the most unlikely upwards it would read Masvidal, Edwards, Covington and Burns. But with that being said, do not be surprised if we see Kamaru Usman with gold around his waist for quite a long time. Champions like this just do not pop up every year. His style is one that is built to last, built to dominate and nullify in the vein of a Georges St. Pierre, but perhaps with an even greater level of physical strength. The game is constantly evolving, as we know, and for all his critics, I can't really point to a weakness in Usman's arsenal. Perhaps his offensive striking isn't of that elite caliber, but even still, the manner in which he uses it complements everything else he brings to the table excellently. The Usman era is upon us, folks, it seems, so you best get used to it. If you enjoyed today's content and would like to stay up to date with our latest uploads, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.